Now, whether you like it or not, the electric revolution is upon us. Electric dirt bikes are popping up everywhere, especially in the kids bike range, and we've tested a whole plethora of different electric kids dirt bikes and they have been excellent. But we haven't seen too many adult electric bikes. We obviously have the Stark Bug, which everyone knows about. Everyone knows what some of its flaws, but some of the good things it does. And one of the new electric adult bikes is this RFN Ares Endurance Road. I think I've got that. It's a bit of a mouthful to get through. Now this is a fully electric dirt bike slash dual purpose slash commuter, I guess you'd call it, with full registration. Now as far as we can tell, it's kind of the first bike in this style, so a dual purpose dirt bike that's electric with registration. And when we saw this bike come in, we were pretty excited. We thought, I wonder if this bike will be any decent for just hardcore trail riding. And it wasn't until we had a chance to chat with the RFN guys here in Australia, we were able to ask them who this bike is designed for. And they made it very clear it's pretty much got three design briefs. Number one is for trail riding, soft trail riding. Number two is actually for farmers. They want to target the agricultural market and get farmers to use these like we have for decades with ag bikes, petrol combustion engine bikes. And then the final one is for commuters. So we're going to do 3 different tests on this bike. We are going to use it on the farm to muster some cattle and see how it goes. I know, having used my son who's just turned 6, he's been using electric bikes for a couple of years on our farm, and we've noticed sometimes when he comes up to the cattle they don't know what to do because there's no noise coming from the motor. So we're going to see if that makes a difference with an adult on the bike. We're also going to see how it kind of goes getting in and out of gullies. We're very hilly here, so is it good enough to get in and out of gullies? What it's like to get a dog on the back, I can pretty much guess and tell you what's going to happen there because it's not even as wide as my hand, which has some pros, but one of the cons might be getting a dog on the back. Then we're going to go take it trail riding. We're going to see how long the battery lasts trail riding, and then we're going to commute on it just around town, some local stuff. We know it's speed limited to around 70 something kilometres, so you're not going to be able to do any highway riding, but you will be able to commute. So we're going to do a bit of that as well, and we're going to come back to you and tell you what we think is good about it, where we think it could be improved, and then also the important stuff like how long does the battery last, how much power does it have, and all the bits in between. So stay tuned while we do some testing, and we'll cover all 3 of those aims that RFN had when designing this bike. Okay, we have tested this RFN Ares Endurance in all the 3 scenarios that we think it's designed for, which is farming, commuting, and of course trail riding. So I'm going to tell you what I like, what I didn't like, what it does well, where it could be improved, and if it suits any of those particular disciplines better than the other. I'm just going to start from the front of the bike. 21-inch front wheel, which is awesome. The hubs, everything's built to a price point, and I feel like the hubs probably aren't going to survive big logs and square edges if you go hard trail riding. And you're competing with your mates on mid-capacity enduro bikes. But big 21-inch front, so it's good for climbing over rocks and bits and pieces. The tyre, it is a commuter tyre. So if you're going to buy this bike for a farm bike and maybe a little bit of trail riding with your kids, you're going to need to get a proper knobby with some side knobs on it. And the front peak is skinny and thin, which looks really weird, but I didn't actually get any mud on my face. So I think you're never really taking it that gnarly, so I think it works. The fork, now the fork is soft, but despite it being soft and, like I said, this bike built to a price point, for some strange reason, the adjustment works really well. So you can stiffen it up quite a bit, which makes it a little less springy or soft or spongy, I should say, and makes it actually feel quite firm in that first part of the stroke. And I found that came in handy when I was trail riding, but when I was commuting, or especially when I was just on the farm doing farm work, I wound it all the way off because I wanted the thing as soft as I could, because I'm plodding along after cattle. So it's real slow and I wanted the softest suspension. So it has adjustment on the top, and I actually found it, if once you wind all the compression and all the rebound off, it actually softens up quite a bit, which is good. So we're going to move along. So front end wise, it's actually not too bad. We're going to move along. The actual feel of the bike, it's narrow, it's thin. It's thinner than any combustion petrol bike you're going to get on. If you kind of look between here, there's no radiator shrouds to get around. So it's weird going from this bike back to a traditional combustion bike. They feel real fat, even the narrowest combustion bikes, but that's because this thing is so narrow. So nice and narrow, feels comfortable, it's easy to throw around. It is physically smaller. I'm 6'2", and I found to be a little bit cramped, probably similar to how you'd be on an ag bike. Think that kind of size in terms of seat height and feel, just a lot narrower, thinner and lighter. But that being said, it is small and light, and you can really just pick it up and pull it where you want it. Brakes, now this is probably one of two sticking points for me with this bike. I'd love to see bigger brakes. I have absolutely ploughed through brakes on these things. They're not much bigger than a mountain bike brake, and I would be lucky to get 500 kilometers before I've got to replace them. And all that happens is you just wear the pad, and then you find you're pulling the lever and it's up against the handlebar. And then also, even when you've got fresh pads in there, you got to jump on the brakes to get it to stop. I had a few moments commuting, especially in the wet, where I was coming into a roundabout and I just wasn't thinking. I'm thinking on a big adventure bike, and I've just grabbed the brakes and I'm kind of not stopping. And so I've just like squeezed as hard as I could, and it didn't even lock up. It just slowly came to a stop. So I'd love to see bigger brakes on this bike. Now, it's not a deal breaker. You just got to be mindful of it in traffic. That's probably the biggest one, is you just don't want to, rear-end a car because you're not thinking you'd grab the brakes at the last minute. Trail riding, you just got to think about it and make sure you ride the brake the whole time. And for farm work, obviously, it's really no problem. We're pretty steep and hilly where we are, and I had no problems with these brakes in that stuff. But yes, I'd love to see bigger and more serious brakes on this bike. I'm going to talk about the power and the motor. So you've really only got one power setting on this bike. You do have rocket mode, but that only lasts for a takeoff. It then drops itself out, and you flick across to the standard rabbit mode. The standard rabbit mode is, like all electric bikes, everyone has this question for me: isn't it super fast? Isn't it wild? Yeah, it is. You snap the throttle on this thing, you're going to loop out. Everyone goes to grab the clutch, realizes there isn't one in there, and they end up kind of whiskey throttling into the bush. So it's got lots of great power off the start. I can like pop up and just slow wheelie it for as long as I want with my feet down, because it's got so much, up at the start. But it does tend to sign off. Now that's my biggest issue. So there were a few times commuting where I had to be on an 80km/h road, and this thing tops out the current standard gearing at 75, or is it 76 exactly. And when an electric bike tops out, you get to that speed and it's like the motor's stopped. It's like, duh, and it just won't, like a combustion bike, keep kind of rolling on downhill. I remember getting to some sections while commuting thinking like, oh no, I've got to bust up my ass, it's an 80km/h section, I'm coming to the downhill, sweet, it'll just start rolling. Nope, they stay at 76 km/h down the hill. So final gearing will change that. You'll lose a little bit of that fun like pop and wheelie mode that you see all the kids doing, but you would get probably 100 km/h out of it with some final gearing changes. That's what I would recommend if you are commuting on it. Definitely do that, because the 76 km/h is great, but if you're going anything under 80 k's, but anytime you go 80 and over, you're going to be caught up in traffic. It's a little thin bike, and you're going to feel the trucks and the buses go blowing past you while you're in the left lane. So maxes out at 76. Great power until then. There's power all the way through that rev range. It's an electric bike, so it's super linear. There's plenty there. You can use the back brake like a clutch, come up the logs, stop, pop, go again. But on the road, you are tapped out at 76 kilometers an hour as it is standard. I'm going to keep moving back through the bike. I'm going to get to the shock. Now the shock, that's an interesting one. Again, you have compression adjustment on it, and it made a world of difference. For farm work, soft as I could go. For enduro work, hard as I could go. And it did make a huge difference. I pillioned my wife around a little bit through the bush to go on some dates, and we found that winding the compression on for both of us on there helped big time. Stop it doing that, springy trampoline thing. So the shock actually is pretty good. The only downside to the rear end is the hub and the swing arm are lightweight, and that's a good thing because it makes the bike super light and easy to pick up if you're a beginner. But I feel like if I was to yank it hard enough or whack a log with it, or you know, get off a little bit of single track and it kind of start to step out and it snap onto something. It feels like something might almost break. So the rear end, the shock is excellent. The hub and the swing arm, they are lighter weight, lighter, thinner, and they just feel a little bit like they've got a bit more flex than what we would be used to on a $20,000 enduro bike. So again, this is a third of the price, and it's not designed for that. RFN have never said we're going to go out there and beat a KTM 350, but just be mindful of that. If you think I'm going to go trail riding all day on it with, you know, and go as hard as I can, you've got a good chance of doing something really bad to that hub. Okay, so that's front to rear. Everything else about the bike I really love. Grips is nice and soft. It's got a little power button so you can turn the bike on, and then you've got a little button here that makes it go. That's kind of handy so that you don't turn it on and then someone comes up and says, oh, nice bike, mate, and they rip on the throttle and you loop out. And the only other thing I'd say too is the charging port is back underneath here, and we've found that I have pretty standard size hands, maybe on the bigger size, and I struggle to get the charging port in and out without getting 2 fingers onto it. Now I like that because it means in the mud and the dirt, it's actually out of the way. We've had other electric bikes where we've had issues with the charging port getting full of mud and dirt and giving us a limp mode. This one's tucked away. You can see I've got the cap popped off it there. And so nothing actually catches up on it, which is handy. So hard to get to, but nice in a way so it won't get mud on it. And then the other little thing was there's just a few, I think we got a pre-proddy model. This is kind of before they've finalised it. And there's just a few wires that probably should be better tucked away on this bike. And then the last little thing is we've noticed some of the little hex heads have had some rust to them. We've had the bike for about 6 months, and it's the only ones that have done it, and I assume that's because it was maybe a bit of an afterthought with the rear rack here, which has come in handy to strap stuff down to. But they're all minor things that can be fixed. So what do I think about this bike and where does it fit in? I think for $7,000 or $8,000, it's excellent value for money because that's regoed. So you can use this bike to commute into work. You'll get about, we were able to get from the northern beaches of Sydney into the city and back, and we got onto the turtle mode, which is when it's running out of battery, kind of as we were coming up to home. So you're probably talking about somewhere between 70 and 80 kilometers is the max you're going to get on this bike. Now that's because most of the road for me into the city is tapped. So the minute you get this thing up and humming as fast as it can, it just sucks the battery. So hopefully if the commuting you're doing is mainly in and around your little town, it'll be way better on battery. But we got about 80 kilometers was the maximum we could get out of it before it went into the turtle mode and started to limp us home. So as a commuter, if you're doing under 80 Ks, it's great. You've got to charge it every night. You've got to remember that. It's super narrow, super thin, sit up high like on a dirt bike so you can split traffic, you can see through traffic. So it would work as a commuter. It's silent. Now I know people like noise when they're commuting, so cars can hear you coming. I'm neither here nor there. I thought it was really good as a commuter. At the lights, you can just kind of drag off anything, so at least you can get out in front. Just remember, you've got 80 kilometers as range, that's all we could really get out of it, and you've got 76 kilometers an hour as your maximum speed. So if anyone's trying to take freeways into work that are 100, good luck. Then what is it like as a farm bike? This is probably where, it's tricky. This is probably where it's best. It is the ultimate all-round, mainly farm bike. Do a little bit of trail riding with your kids so long as it's slow and you can just follow them when it's soft, and then use it to get into town to get the milk and bread and bits and pieces. As a farm bike, it's excellent. You can make that suspension nice and soft and cushy. It's light, it uses no fuel, so you're not refueling bikes. It doesn't have a radiator for you to bust when you drop it to go and pick something up. And yeah, it's super efficient. So as a farm bike, we've actually really liked it. There's no kick-starting it when you're stuck in the bottom of a creek or near a dam. It's just turn it on and away you go. We did notice chasing cattle though, they do kind of look at you funny because there's no noise, and fortunately it does have a horn, so you can kind of beat the cows to get them along, but they did kind of look at us funny with an electric bike. Now my son is 6 and he's been moving cattle for me on an electric bike since he was about 3 or 4, so they're starting to get used to the no noise bike, but it did kind of catch them off guard. But as a farm bike, I think it'd be excellent. So that leads us down to our last one, which is trail riding. Like I said earlier, you're not going to keep up with the 350. You're not going to keep up with a full-blown enduro bike. It's just, if you did, there won't be much left of the bike because you're just going to have to go too fast, and the parts on it are not engineered and designed to go that fast and smash into things that hard. So if you're going to trail ride it, it's the kind of trail riding you do behind your kids who are on 110s, on 50s, on 140s, 150s trail bikes. So think TTR, KLX, even DRZ 125, DRZ, the DR250, those kind of bikes would be good to go trail riding with your family on. Now, it could be the kind of bike that maybe you buy for the farm to do a bit of ag work. You then buy so your missus can go trail riding, because it'll be great, it's nice and low seat. You can't adjust the power, so hopefully someone who's not familiar with the whiskey throttle doesn't get in trouble, because it is aggressive. But it'd be good for maybe people who are less confident because it's lower to the ground, so they could trail ride on the weekend, and then you could also use it to commute. All right, guys, so that's a wrap on the RFN Ares Endurance. Like I said, it kind of does everything pretty well. I think it is a farm bike first and foremost. It's quite good at that. As a trail bike, it's good for following your kids around and maybe doing some soft trail riding. And then as a commuter, I think it'd be good if you don't have to go that far. Remember, the range is going to be the issue, and the top speed, unless you change that gearing. So it does do all of them. We've been pretty impressed. Nothing's broken. It's still survived. We've had this bike now for 6 months, and we've done everything from cattle work to trail riding and obviously to commuting, and nothing's broken. So can't complain about that. We're looking forward to putting a few more hours on this thing and, yeah, running it out for another year.